Welcome to the Levrige Show. This is Brett Ingram, and today let's talk about stress. Stress is something that just, as human beings, we have a tendency to want to shy away from. We want to get away from as fast as we can because our natural state is to be relaxed, to not have to feel any pressure, and believe that we can just sort of exist and not have to face the pressure of feeling we need to perform, or feeling we need to do something, or feeling that we have to do things that we want. It's in our nature to want to do things that we want to do, not things that we have to do. And so when we start to feel pressure, when we start to feel stress, there's a natural tendency to want to alleviate that pressure, to want to get to a point where we no longer feel it. It's sort of a state of pain, and we want to move away from that. And we want to move more toward a state of pleasure, or at least an absence of pain. And the interesting thing about stress is that the way that you look at it and the way that you handle it actually may be a very big determinant of how successful you are or can be as an entrepreneur. And here's why. Stress is a motivating factor. Now, for good, bad, or otherwise, it's a motivating factor. And so it's not so much the stress that's in your life, it's the way that you react to it. So if you feel pressure and that causes you sort of the flight or fight instinct comes out in you, if you have a tendency to sort of huddle in a ball in the corner, it's going to be very difficult to be successful as an entrepreneur because there are a lot of different forces that are coming at you. There is a lot of change. There are a lot of unknowns and variables that you're going to need to face to be successful in business. It's just that simple. And so if your instinct, when you feel that kind of stress or pressure, is to shrink down and to sort of hide away, you want to we need to reframe that. We need to get it to a point where instead of looking at it as a negative and as something that's crippling and immobilizing, and we focus on the anxiety and all the negative and the bad stuff that can happen, we need to flip that. And we need to use it to empower us. We need to use it to motivate us, because stress, ironically, although we try to avoid it, especially as an entrepreneur, can be your best friend. Stress can be an excellent, motivating, powerful force if you look at it in a different light, if you look at it from a different perspective. Instead of seeing it from the perspective of I have to, and I'm forced to, and what if I don't, and here are the consequences. Instead, what you want to do is you want to view stress as a challenge. You want to view stress and whatever thing that's put in front of you as something to be used to motivate you to work. You know, in any business endeavor and anything really else in your life, I see this in sports with my kids and their teams that they're on and players that I see. You see it in professional sports. I see it in business, both in my own and in other people's businesses, because it's just part of human nature. When you have the absence of stress, you start to feel comfortable. And when you start to feel comfortable, that level of comfort gets you to a point where you can become complacent. So in sports, the difficulty with this is you don't push anymore. You don't work quite as hard. You don't put in quite as many reps. You don't give that extra 10%. And so your performance starts to suffer. Now, you see this on a professional level with athletes who just sign a big contract. There's no stress. They've got guaranteed millions of dollars. They've got a 5-year deal. So do the first 3-4 years of that deal even really matter? The old cliche is that in a contract year, all of a sudden someone is going to be playing great again because they have the stress. They have the pressure that if I don't perform and produce this year, then I'm not going to get another big deal. I'm going to be done. I'm going to have to sign a smaller deal or I'm going to get cut. But during those other years, there's no pressure. There's no stress. Now in business, it's the same thing. If you start doing things and your sales are rolling in and things are going really well, there's definitely a tendency to want to take the foot off the gas and say, you know what, we can just coast here for a little bit. And the challenge with that, the problem with that, is that that usually leads to a situation of not only stress, but a high amount of stress, because when you coast and then all of a sudden you realize, uh-oh, now we need to pick it up again, it's that much harder to get the gas pedal pushed down again, especially if you have a team and you have a staff, or you have other people that you need to motivate, because they're all used to coasting. And you may be able to turn it on and turn it off, but not everybody's going to be able to do that. It's going to be a big challenge, and all of a sudden it's going to be, why is he or she so grumpy? Why are they driving us so hard now? Like, things were great for, and it's just human nature. So again, using stress to your advantage, you want to take that pressure, and you want to use that to motivate you. You want to start thinking about stress instead of I have to, and what if I don't, and these are the consequences. You want to use that as a thing that pushes you in a good way, to say, listen, if we can overcome this, we can overcome anything. Look, this is a big challenge in front of us. We've got to find a way to generate another, $30,000 in revenue in the next 90 days. So instead of being worried about it, we're all going to focus, we're going to get super focused, and we're going to allow that to sharpen our edge, sharpen our focus, sharpen our motivation. We're going to use that as a driving force. We're going to make it get us to jump out of bed in the morning. We're going to make it to get us to work that extra hour in the afternoon or the evening, and to really make the time that we're working more productive, as opposed to coasting. And this is the secret. See, this is why it all comes back to whether you love what you do. Because if you don't love what you do, the issue is going to be, when you have this stress, it's going to feel like anxiety. And when you need to work hard, it's going to feel like work. If you love what you do, having that stress to perform, having that stress to produce is not going to be an issue, because you love it anyway. So the fact of the matter is, if you embrace that stress and you say, look, I'm actually going to rename it. Forget this garbage name. We're not even going to call it stress. We're going to call it motivation. We're going to call this, like work power or motivation or energy or whatever you want to reframe it as, because that's really what it is. If you harness that, it's going to drive you forward in ways that, you would never have done if it was just sort of left to your own devices and whatever. Like, there's a reason that when you have a safety net, it's actually harder to perform. Whereas if you have no other option, you'll find a way to get it done, because you don't have another option. That's what you have to do. I remember hearing some famous performer, and I don't remember who it was, but it was I believe it was a famous singer or a rock group. And they had asked the singer, and this was somebody who had been doing this for decades, are you nervous before you go on stage? And this is very, very common, by the way, with comedians. The most accomplished comedians that are considered the funniest people in the entire world, if you ask them, they'll tell you they're nervous every time they go on stage. They've been doing this for decades. Why shouldn't they be relaxed? Why shouldn't they know, I've made millions of dollars. Everybody loves me. Everybody laughs at my stuff. Why does it even matter? Because they always have that fear that they're not going to perform. People aren't going to laugh at their jokes. And that is the motivating force. That's the thing that drives them to excellence. They don't view that fear as something crippling and say, what? I can't go on stage tonight, Apollo. I can't go on stage tonight. What if people don't laugh at me? They say, what? I got to work and work and work on my routine to make sure it's so damn funny that everybody is going to be on their feet. And that's what they do. They use it to motivate them to write better jokes and to have that edge. And that is the secret to high performance. That's the secret to big time success. And it transfers the same way into entrepreneurial vision. If you look at people and the greatest success stories in the world of people who have built these amazing companies and empires, almost always you'll find that there's this constant fear or constant need to constantly feel like they need to keep performing. You know, most people look at them from the outside and say, you've arrived. What else do you have to prove? That isn't the way that they see it, because that's what keeps driving them. You know, Larry Bird, famous NBA basketball player, said, you know, he would have these nightmares even after he had achieved NBA level success and won championships of, you know, going out and having a bad game. And he would have these worries and constant fears about money. And it just drove him and drove him and drove him. You know, he's not going to perform as well as Magic Johnson did. And, you know, so he'd look at his box score every day. And a lot of people would look at that from the outside and think either A, that's totally ridiculous, look at all you've accomplished, or B, gosh, you know, that's a lot of pressure and stress. But for him, that's what motivated him, and look at what he went on to achieve. Here's a guy that was not generally that athletic. He couldn't jump. He couldn't run fast. He's one of the greatest players ever to play the game. And it's because he was motivated. It's because he took that stress and he channeled it into something positive. So look at that stress and embrace it and use it as a motivating force instead of something that shuts you down. Use it as a challenge. Embrace it. Hit it head on and say, yeah, bring it on. I'm going to make this happen. You know, we're going to accomplish some huge things today because we're going to take a look at this and we're going to smack it right in the face and use that to motivate us and really make a difference today. That is how you embrace it. That is how you use it as an entrepreneur. And that is why stress and the way you react to it may actually determine your success or failure as an entrepreneur. As always, if you have any questions or comments, share them with me at levrigeshow.com or tweet them at #levrigeshow. And until next time, make it happen.